not eating well and not looking after yourself in general, whether you're stressed or not, isn't a good thing. Whether it's overeating or under consuming. Hello and welcome to another vlog on YouTube and podcast on Spotify by the Fit Minds podcast. Just Coach Mariah here today. Apologies if you're watching on YouTube. I don't get many YouTube viewers, but if you ever decide not to listen to the podcast and just watch it on YouTube, it's pretty comical sometimes. The setup I've got, it looks like I've got pillows on my baby's head, but I don't. They're just shadowing her. So she's just gone down for her afternoon nap. So I thought I'd whip a podcast out. Why not? Nice and inspirational, isn't it? All right. So today's topic is the impacts of stress on women's nutrition, or more specifically, probably the topic of stress eating, which is probably fairly taboo and confrontational. I've done a couple of podcasts about are you stressed or just disorganized. I've talked about binge eating. I've talked about eating off plan, all that type of stuff. But I guess this one will probably be more focused on what leads us to stress eating specifically. So overeating calories, eating food just because you are stressed, using food as a coping mechanism for stress. I have touched on this topic in previous podcasts before, but this is going to really hone in on what it looks like being stressed, overeating, binge eating, snacking as a result of external stresses, or it could be even physical stress on the body as well. Maybe you're feeling physically exhausted and therefore the overconsumption of calories or food as a way or a means of coping, it can be used for anything really. Comfort eating, I guess you could call it, stress eating. And first of all, I want to dive into reasons we can experience stress. We've all been stressed. In fact, I think people are probably more stressed now in their lives than they've ever been before. I've got a cute little nut bar here with me. I don't know why I ever bring snacks to podcasts, because I don't know what type of intention I have of eating them, considering it would be like ASMR with a crunchy packet and a nut bar. But anyway, I guess it's there to remind me to eat. I have the opposite issue myself, is that I've never been a stress eater. I've certainly been in the reverse with the anorexic tendencies and background of somebody who doesn't eat enough when they're stressed. So I guess this podcast can also cover that, in a sense that, our nutrition goes to shit sometimes, most of the time, when we're stressed. I don't know many people who are able to keep their shit together when they're stressed with their food. And it's been a skill that I've developed over time that most of the time I can do it. Sometimes I can't. As coaches, we need to be transparent in saying that, yes, we have our flaws and our troubles too. And you might dream and think that eating less when you're stressed is, oh wow, what a terrible problem to have. I wish I had that problem. But it's not always a good thing. Not eating well and not looking after yourself in general, whether you're stressed or not, isn't a good thing. Whether it's overeating or under consuming. So let's obviously first off start off with the idea that we need to understand what our triggers are prior to, if we want to stop stress eating, going in the cupboard, eating an entire packet of chips, going to the freezer, eating an entire bucket of ice cream, knowing full well that you're doing it because you're feeling stressed and you're wanting relief, right? In that moment, and I used to be a binge eater myself, so back in the day I was a bulimic and a binge eater, so I have been on the side where it wasn't starvation and it wasn't avoidance of food. It was both. I would avoid food an entire day, not eat at all, and then I would all of a sudden binge. And so it was this constant, what we would call binge purge cycle. And the purging isn't necessarily just throwing up and everything like that. It's pretty confrontational, but it's also consideration of starvation. So this up and down, and it's very easy to do when you're in a heightened state, when you're anxious, when you've got shit going on in your life, you're going through separation, you're going through dramas with your partner. Usually those are the common culprits. All sorts of stuff, family issues, family struggles as well. I'm no stranger to that right now, and outside of that, having a baby, being a mum, being overstimulated, having commitments, having a very stressful work schedule. I find that's probably one of the most common ones with my clients is their work. Their work is incredibly stressful, incredibly arduous, incredibly taxing on them. So it doesn't matter what the stress looks like. It can come in all shapes and forms and sizes, and also it can be from multiple ends. And you could have the stress of, you've got your emails dinging off, you've got your text messages going off, your phone's friggin' ringing, you've got bills that are due, you don't know when they were due, you're disorganized because you've got shit flying everywhere, the house is a friggin' mess, you've got some drama going on in your family, someone's fighting with someone, or some crap is happening at some point in time, or just it's happening all over the place and you just think, holy shit, I'm in a sinking ship here. So that's stress, right? Looks different for everybody. I could have painted a picture just then that sounds exactly like yours, or the complete polar opposite. You could have stress for all sorts of different types of reasons. Your car's broken down. The list goes on. We have daily stresses, we have small stresses, we have large stresses, we have long-standing stresses. I have one in my lap right now. She's beautiful. I adore her. But being a mum is stressful. There's responsibilities that are not your child's fault, but obviously you are responsible for another life, another human being, and that's a big responsibility, which can be stressful. The actions required are stressful. So on top of everything else, right? So how do we know our triggers? How do we understand, first of all, knowing what sets you off when you start stress eating, before I go into stress management? So obviously we know the moment before we go and try and eat that bucket of ice cream, stress eating or under eating, not consuming enough calories. We know when we haven't had enough food, we're feeling flat in energy, we keep avoiding and missing meals and skipping meals. And I'm pretty bad for that. I'll just, not have an afternoon tea because, oh, I've got too much shit going on and I've got to handle this first, right? Whereas then the opposite, the stress eating of, I've got too much shit going on, I need to feel better instantly. Here's the ice cream, here's the chips, here's the whatever. Or late at night, usually it tends to be pretty typical for most people. And so what are our triggers? Triggers can be anything from, I don't know, it could literally be the way that you feel in that moment. You could be saying to yourself, for me, it's certainly a heightened sense of awareness. So I know that my trigger for under consuming calories is when my brain just stops working. It might be of an afternoon, it might be of a morning, I might have lots of things going on, what I call open tabs in my mind. And I'm letting lots of things in as well. So messages, I'm getting Instagram messages, Facebook messages, emails. As a coach, you get a lot, trainer eyes, you get bombarded. And don't get me wrong, it's good. It's running a business, it's a good thing, but very stimulated. As you would be in your job, any role that you might have emails coming through, you might have meetings, all this type of stuff going on. So whatever it is, in the previous times where you have gone through a bout of stressful eating, or stressful eating, stress eating. It's not very stressful when you're eating, it shouldn't be. But when you've gone through these bouts of stress eating, what has it happened just after? What happened before it, right? It's like, well, if we go back and reflect, we can't change what's happened. What happened before it? So I would say the last time I grossly underconsumed calories, I can't remember exactly what was happening in the day, but there was a lot on. I had committed myself to too much, right? So overcommitment is my trigger. Certainly giving myself too many things to do in the day and not asking for help where I need to, right? And then not communicating that to other people. So they're my triggers, is like piling too much on my plate, putting such high expectations on myself and not giving myself enough leeway. Your triggers might be something as simple as, I don't know, turning up for a meeting that you don't need to be at, but going to it because you think you need to go to it anyway, or it might be that you feel compulsed to answer your phone, or it might be that you, what's an example? Haven't exactly hit the mark with your training and nutrition for the day and you feel like a failure because you've had all these other things going on and you haven't had a chance to do it. And then so because of those feelings of failure, going, oh my God, like I haven't done this right, I'm terrible, or whatever you tell yourself, you then go and stress eat. So it's usually feelings or things that we're doing, boundaries we're not holding with other people or ourselves, these types of, so you can see how this is, everything that's happening is not necessarily, the triggers for stress isn't the situation. Whether it doesn't matter what it is. It could be your dog jumping up on you, something else going on, overstimulation, whatever it might be, that gets you to a point where you are chronically stressed. But your triggers are actually more internal than anything else. And this is why it's interesting how nutrition does overlap all the time. And I talk about this constantly with your mental health, with your mindset, with your brain. This is why the podcast is called Fit Minds, because we can't possibly begin to work on nutrition, training, you name it, if we don't actually tackle what's going on inside our minds, if we don't train our minds to be the way that we require them to be for things to go the way that we want them to go. It doesn't mean you have to be robotic, but when you can feel yourself getting close, or even just before that heightened state, so you're getting worked up, you oh my God, like I feel myself panicking, my heart's going through the roof, I'm getting these ruminating thoughts, whatever it is. When you start to catch that before it becomes a snowstorm, so a snowflake becomes a snowstorm, or whatever analogy you want to draw there, a water droplet becomes a waterfall, do you know what I mean? A molehill becomes a mountain. When you catch what's going on inside your mind before it gets much bigger than it needs to, there's a few things you can do, which is, number one, start communicating with people around you. It's no coincidence that when you share a problem, it's usually halved, someone you can trust. Hey, so-and-so, fucking hell, I've had a week, or I've had a day. Oh my God, I'm feeling just, whoever the person is that you trust. I'm having the worst day, or this is happening, this is really stressing me out. If you can look for help in that situation, that's something I'm really bad at, is asking for help. Do that. I really need your help right now. Can you please help me? Or even just communicating that you're not feeling great, and the person might actually then offer help. If they don't, well, then you might need to ask for it, because people aren't mind readers. So knowing your triggers, knowing what to do in a situation before you start the stress eating, which can then bring you down a peg. Just, okay, down we go. You know what I mean? Like dial it down a bit in volume or whatever it is, but bring that intensity down so that you're not, I don't mean down a peg in a negative sense of like bring you down a peg, but it's to the extent where you are not amplifying what is happening for you larger than it needs to go, and then as a result exploding and then reaching for food, or the opposite is depriving, and what I do. And some people do this as well. So know your triggers, which is obviously your own thought processes, and knowing when it's starting, when it's growing. Now, a few things we need to touch on as well is things like cortisol. So stress in general, you feel it in your body. It's in your traps, it's in your neck, the tension. I would say 9 out of 10 people I speak to on a daily basis are chronically stressed. And much of this is because we are, and I've said this in previous podcasts, we're so overstimulated. Too many things going on. I can tell you, I can look around the room right now of things I've noticed. I've got a flashing light going on over there. I've got a sleeping baby here. I've got a laptop screen on here. I've got something filming me. Bright light coming through the window. This is actually a fairly calm setting, right? In comparison, birds outside. In comparison to what a lot of people are experiencing on a daily basis. They have notifications on their phone going off every 2 seconds. Their phone's on loud or it's on silent, and they've got notifications just dinging every 2 seconds. I've said this in previous podcasts. I turned my notifications off years ago, long time ago. I'm going to say probably like 3 or 4 years ago. I only get texts and calls now, and even those I tend to ignore because nobody deserves the immediate access to you. Because unfortunately, if you put that out there, then everyone's going to have that immediate access, and you are never going to feel at peace. You're never going to feel like you can just sit and complete or finish a task. Constantly distracted. Why do you think that so many people being diagnosed with ADHD these days? Is because we come from a generation that has become chronically distracted from technology from a time when we weren't previously. So stress releases cortisol, right? So I was talking about stress and cortisol. So we are being constantly stressed and stimulated. And so 9 out of 10 people, I'd say probably even most people I talk to, I don't know many people who say they're not stressed. Unless they've got into some sort of Zen Buddha state in comp prep and they're in their own little la-la land. Great, that works really well, to be honest. Cortisol, not necessarily. People talk about cortisol and stress as being this terrible thing for you. Cortisol is required to make certain things happen. Norepinephrine, epinephrine, there are some stress hormones that are required to allow for things to occur. So for us to be able to exercise, we need adrenaline. That requires some cortisol. We actually need cortisol for exercise. We actually have cortisol released after we exercise as well. We have the other fun hormones as well. We have a release of endorphins. I've talked about happy hormones in different podcasts before, but we've got cortisol as this really, if there's too much of it, it's kind of like you've got a cup that can only really fit so much cortisol in it. And that's our body, really, if you think about it. It can only tolerate so much stress from different areas. So physical stress, mental stress, whatever you want to, any type of way that you want to categorize it. There's obviously the physiological side of things. There's scientific terminologies for it as to where the stress comes from, but really specifically physical or mental stress. Let's just categorize those two. So, and physical could be dieting stress. There are stressors on the body. Now, it's all cumulative, right? Now, there again are different types of stresses. So your body can handle different types. However, there is a ceiling where there is too much of something, right? So there is such a thing as exercising too much. It's too much stress on the body. You'll break something eventually. You'll injure yourself. Everything becomes too tight. There is such a thing as too much stimulus. There is such a thing as not enough stimulus as well. People who get because they're not doing anything at all and they're chronically lonely. But there is such a thing as too much dieting stress, too much stress in general, also stress from lack of sleep, stress from lack of hydration. So we get these spikes in cortisol. Cortisol can be a very negative thing, which then results in this huge amount of, I guess negative energy, but also in general, this huge amount of cortisol kind of, swirling around your body. And don't get me wrong, cortisol is not all bad. We do need a certain amount of cortisol for certain things to occur. If someone's chasing you, you need cortisol to kick in so that you can run away from them if you're in danger. So we do require these hormones. In excess, however, we see that cortisol, especially we've seen, in excess with lots of different types of things, that we end up with what's called a spike in leptin. Now that's a hunger hormone. And basically we end up not being able to, leptin and ghrelin, these different spikes in hunger and satiating hormones. And we end up, not being satiated, not having enough of that satiating hormone and too much of a hunger spiking hormone. And so high levels of cortisol spike your hunger hormones. And there's this interesting thing that happens, which basically says, eat as much food as you can while you can, because something fucking bad's happening to us and we need to stock up, right, on energy, because we're going to have to run. We're going to have to, that's what it is. You're in this constant state of fight or flight. You're on edge all the time. You're anxious, you're shaking, you're nervous. You're, sometimes as well overstimulated from caffeine. So that can be another thing. And so when you add all this up and you look at people are walking around just so tense all the time. Everything is so fucking shit all the time. And it is getting worse. Don't get me wrong. It's okay to be stressed, to have stressful energy and have some negativity. That's normal in life. But a lot of this is because people don't know how to just literally take the stress, pack it the fuck away and go and do another thing, or not pay attention to it at the time, or not entertain it, or even so people do become addicted to stress. And so that's the hard part of it too, is that stress addiction is quite literally that, the addiction of feeling like, okay, this is my constant state. I don't have any other way of functioning. So you get so used to doing it. And then that's where the stress eating comes in, because they're always in that state. So we also have quite a bit of water retention with high levels of stress as well. So that's one thing where people will look at themselves and go, I don't really feel myself. I don't really look like myself either. And it doesn't just affect you mentally, but you physically don't look and feel your best when you're really stressed. So on top of that, sometimes we can then self-sabotage because we're not feeling good about ourselves, because we don't like what we see in the mirror. I have seen time and time again the amount of people who say, because I'm not confident, or I don't fit my clothes anymore, I don't like what I see, I just decide to eat a bucket of ice cream. And to me, that doesn't logically make any sense, but it is what some people do. It's just this way of comforting themselves and also solidifying in their minds their thoughts about themselves already. So basically making it worse. Now, I've done podcasts on self-sabotage, so if you want to talk about that, go back and listen to that one. But much of changing these behaviors comes down to a very, very simple thought process. Does this help me? Before we go about the stress eating, is this going to, what I'm dealing with right now, it could be a giant clusterfuck mess, honestly. Does this help me? Does this stress eating actually do anything for me? Really, in the big scheme of things, stress eating solves absolutely nothing. There is no resolution from it. You don't go and eat a pack of Cheetos and then all of a sudden all of your financial problems are gone. It's not this magical fix. And so when you put some logic to it and take away the emotion and take away the, well, it makes me feel better. This is the problem, is that most people are chasing a temporary feeling and not actually thinking about, logically, a pack of Cheetos doesn't solve my whatever, emotional distress, my struggle in my relationship, my, stressful duties as a mother. It doesn't solve any of that. In fact, we've seen this, but stress eating makes this stuff feel worse, because you might feel good, and this is what most people are chasing, is this dopamine hit, right? So we talk about happy hormones, talk about stress hormones. People are chasing dopamine, get the same hit from drugs, alcohol, cigarettes, sex with strangers. Like I've talked about this before. Dopamine, yeah, is a necessary happy hormone. It's also something that's very easy to get from lots of different sources. You can get it from social media, you can get it from playing a game, you can get it from gambling. And what it is this really quick, easy hit of a happy hormone. Yes, we need certain amounts of dopamine, but when we only chase dopamine, we're not actually encouraging these other happy hormones, which are much more long sustained. And so this is why so many people, drug addicted, alcoholics, gamers, never leaving their house, eating a shit ton of food. We have these obesity epidemics, and we don't actually think about what's happening where people have found these very terrible coping mechanisms for stress and smacked it on there because it's just so easy to do all of those things. It is easy to sit on your bum. It is easy to eat shit. It's easy to drink alcohol. It's easy to take drugs, because these are all things that are instantaneous fixes. Yeah. They give this quick hit of dopamine. And so if you're stressed, depressed, anxious, that quick hit of dopamine fools you into thinking, I feel better. Just for now, I feel better. So obviously with poor choices, when we are stressed, we make poor choices. So that is part of the reason why we stress eat, is because we're not really thinking straight as it is. We start to think about nothing logically. So as I talked about previously, knowing your triggers, knowing how you feel prior to making these poor choices. Sometimes it takes looking into the future. Some people talk about mindfulness in the moment and thinking about what you're doing right now. And I absolutely agree. Taking yourself back to the moment and going, what am I doing now? Is this going to help me? Breathe. Okay, Mariah, take yourself away from the kitchen, go outside. And this is the same stuff I describe to many people. Do something else. Find something else. Take yourself away. Read a book, make a phone call, text somebody, get changed, have a shower, splash your face with water. Splashing your face with water has actually shown these incredible changes in moods, because someone can go from being stressed or tired, overtired, sleep deprived, to then being able to regulate their nervous system again. I don't think you need to go and do cold plunges, for God's sake, but splashing your face with water can have a similar effect. So in the moment, mindfulness, absolutely, I encourage practicing mindfulness. Bringing yourself back to the moment. What am I doing right now? Am I aware of what I'm currently doing? I think that's useful. But I think an added step and an added layer to that, instead of just talking about being mindful and present in the moment, think about what your current actions are going to lead to in the future. So I know that sometimes people talk about anxiety is thinking too much about the future, and depression is thinking too much about the past. Sometimes it can be really useful to think about what your current actions, even a message you're about to send to somebody, whatever it is, and going, stop. Can I see where this could go? Right? And this is where we start to mature. We actually start to become level-headed adults, is when we think before we do, right? And it's not just about the present moment, but we think, what are the ramifications of these actions? Last time I did this, I didn't feel very good. And I talk about this in the binge eating episode as well. What's something else I can do that makes me feel even better than binging on these foods or stress eating or ordering takeaway? And also in that moment, coming back to if it's not binge eating, if it's ordering takeaway, if it's whatever, picking up something from a service station because you're stressed. I just did that because I was stressed. It's like coming back to, is this going to fix, change, solve my problem? No. Will it make me feel better for 5 minutes? Yes. Is it worth those 5 minutes? Probably not, honestly. Like if you really think about it, if you continue to live your life in 5-minute increments, it's not going to go down very well for you. A lot of this requires thinking in the future about what you want for yourself and who you see yourself as in 5 years, 10 years, 6 months, 3 months. I often think about, before I go and do something, I think about, does this serve me? Does this give me any sort of benefit in life? Do I gain anything long term from this? I think in the long term about a lot of things that I do now. I never used to. I was just talking to Chloe earlier, and I was saying that there was a time there where I was working, I think it was a 16-hour shift. I honestly can't remember. Maybe it's longer. It was just the longest shift I've ever done. I worked back to back at a nightclub in Bundy, an event. If anyone's from Bundaberg listening to this podcast, you'll know what it was. A Red Bull event. And then it was went on to the evening, and I think it was like 10 till 5, so whatever that is. 10 in the morning till 5 a.m. the next morning. Anyway, how many hours is that? 15 hours. Maybe I worked from 9. Anyway, I think it was a 15 or 16-hour shift. And I'm pretty sure I had a Red Bull on average every hour. And I was bouncing off the walls. Back then, I didn't really think about what, I was obviously on edge trying to make it through. Didn't think about how it was going to impact me at the end of the shift. Didn't think about my heart. Didn't think about my health. Just thought about drinking Red Bull because it was free. And then by the end of the shift, my hands were shaking. I couldn't pour a shot properly. I was an absolute fucking mess. And obviously didn't sleep properly for days. And I'm surprised I'm still alive after that effort. But I mean, some people drink that much Red Bull on the daily. Anyway, please don't ever do that. You may die. I'm not proud of what that decision was, or decisions like that I made a lot when I was younger, because I didn't think. I just did. And yes, like you could say that's living in the moment and being mindful and being present. But you're not thinking about the ramifications of your actions. You're not thinking about the long term. You're not even thinking about your health. You're just thinking about what makes you feel good right now. So a lot of this is this change of mindset away from instant gratification to delayed gratification. Done a podcast on that as well. So we've probably, qualified and quantified the idea that in no way, shape or form does stress eating help with stress at all. Will not change your very physical, tangible circumstances, nor will it change your relationships, connections, interactions with other people. Sorry if it's going dark, by the way. It is the afternoon here, and I'm not going to turn the light on. So I'm getting, as the podcast goes on, I'm getting darker and darker. Eventually I'll just be in the dark here and you'll just be seeing nothing. But yeah, like it really does come down to small choices daily. Okay, so getting back to topic, things like, instead of overcomplicating it, getting away from your, when nutrition goes shit and you're stressed and like you're like, oh my god, I'm completely off track, I'm not tracking anything, I'm all over the place, holy shit, this is a mess. My suggestion is always to get back to basics. Get back to eating breakfast, lunch and dinner and a snack at least, right? Get back to eating regular meals at regular times. Don't have to track your food, don't have to be on a meal plan. Get back to eating 2 to 3 serves of fruit and 3 to 5 serves of veg. Like, base your meals on those. Get back to drinking enough water. Those are really, really simple things to practice every day. Super simple. So fucking simple. Don't overcomplicate it. When you are trying to bring yourself back from a stressful situation and, nourish yourself slowly, you remember, like anything, like we've talked about before, when the shit hits the fan, that you've got to do this in baby steps. So keep it so basic and so simple and so easy that you can't not follow, right? The other aspect is seeing it in reverse. So instead of thinking, I'm stressed, I'm going to eat like shit, eat whatever I feel like, whatever. When you're stressed, you really have poor cognitive function. If you think about it, scatterbrain is 100% what it's like. Your brain can't focus. And I've said this before, I cannot focus. So not eating food for me when I'm scatterbrained is a stupid idea, because then my brain just gets worse. My cognitive function declines further. I end up in a worse situation than I in the first place, right? So there's all the stress I've got, and that's a form of self-sabotage in itself. All the stress I've got ends up a lot bigger than it needs to be because I can't think straight. You can also remove trigger foods for a while as well, so get rid of the things that you've been stress eating on. Choose foods to eat that you enjoy. Start eating things that you love eating instead of necessarily eating what you think you have to eat. Yeah, so choose foods that you enjoy. So instead of thinking, okay, well, I'll just go back to my fish and beans or my chicken and broccoli because that's what I know that I should be eating. Start actually thinking about, okay, maybe it might not be perfect with my macros or my meal plan, but I don't mind some U Foods meals, or I don't mind some my Muscle Chef meals, or I really like lasagna. I might just make lasagna for a week and chuck some veggies in. It may not be exactly perfect, but it's better than not eating at all, or basically eating a bag of chips for lunch every day, right? So bringing back in some balance into your life that isn't necessarily the extreme of being this huge health food nut, but maybe it's, I love pasta. Cool. So instead of eating deep fried chicken wings every single day because you're stressed and because you don't have the time to do anything else, looking at it the other way around and going, I need to look after myself during these times. If I want to be able to function, I need to actually make some choices that are good for my stress. Reducing stress levels is far more effective when we're eating well, right? We can regulate our emotions much easier when we have got balanced blood sugar. We can make more informed decisions. We are able to, not just think more clearly and for example, answer questions that have been thrown at us or whatever it might be, but we can be more efficient as well. So if you think that things are taking you a long time right now and you're piling more on your plate and you can't get shit done and you're not sleeping well and you're not eating well and you're not drinking enough water and blah, 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 and you're stressed in quotation marks, honestly, peel all of that back. Nothing is more important. All of this bullshit that you've got that you say is stressing you, if you really write down on paper what is the most important part of your day, it's eating food, drinking water, and sleeping and being safe, having safety. If you look at our kids, what's our priority for them? Make sure that they've slept, make sure they've had food, they're fed, yes, right? Because that's what you do. Make sure they're hydrated. Wow, nuts, right? Why is that not our priority? It's because somewhere along the lines, we decided that everybody else was more important than our basic needs. So your basic needs, your child's basic needs, highest priority for the day. And everything else comes after that, and you don't have to feel guilty for that. That then can actually make the stress less stressful because you've got the foundations for treating yourself well first before then managing the stress. And you can manage the stress more effectively. Like, oh my God, go figure, right? So what I'll often do if I'm having a stressful day, and I wouldn't even say today was particularly stressful. There's been some stressors today, for sure. There always is. But when I know that I'm starting to get a little bit scattered, I'll place snacks next to myself to remind myself to eat them. That's why this is sitting here, because I have a tendency to avoid my food, right? In reverse, if you know that you're a person who's, as you get stressed, you start to eat shit, put things near you that you know that you enjoy eating that are potentially better choices, delete the Uber Eats app if you're having a stressful week. You distance yourself from the things that you aren't serving you, and that if you're being prepared beforehand, you can actually prevent yourself from going through these stints of stressful eating. So a lot of it is prior preparation. A lot of it is seeing beforehand, foresight. A lot of it is mindfulness. None of it is not having stress or trying to get rid of stress. And all of it is teaching yourself to treat yourself with respect before everything else. And that it has to keep coming back to that, the bare basics. And self-talk, right? It's a big part of it as well. Self-talk is, in all of this, if you don't believe that you can have a conversation with yourself, you will fail at many things in life that you want to change, because the discussion with yourself is the most important one that you have every single day. Everything else comes after that. And I'll finish off with as well, decision fatigue is a huge part of when you're stressed. And I see this a lot with clients. They'll message me and they'll go, I'm sorry, I haven't replied, or this, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened, and this happened. And life is, shit's flying everywhere and all this crap's happening, right? And I always just come back to, I say to them, it's okay. You don't have to apologize. I'm chilling. There's no urgency on my end. I don't like stressing people, okay? But I always tell them, no matter how stressed you are, or you think you are, don't make things more complicated than they need to be. Decision fatigue is something I learned about a long time ago. There's my tummy rumbling now, so I need to go and eat now. right? There's that reminder, mindfulness. I'm hungry, I need to go eat. So I'll finish the podcast soon. Listening to your body, it's all part of this process. Decision fatigue, right? An incredible man. He taught me about decision fatigue, and I was tracking macros at the time, and I was constantly changing my food. I was just so fascinated with having variety, but I had a really stressful life at that point in time, studying my Cert 3 and 4 in fitness, studying my sports nutrition certification. I was running a gym, I was launching my online business at the same time. I was going through a lot of trouble with a relationship at the time as well. So what really in that scenario, and I was prepping, competing. In that scenario, what would have been helpful for me, and what he was trying to get at, was reduce your decision fatigue. What you can do with food, instead of constantly feeling like you need variety and changing it all the time, especially when you're under stress, find your staples. Find the things that you love and enjoy. If you don't love and enjoy your food right now, get some ready-made meals ordered. If you're really stressed, you're obviously working some long hours, there's probably some money there somewhere that you can use. And if not, dip into savings for a bit. It's okay, you can do that. And reduce the fatigue around the choices you make with food so that you don't have to think about it so much. So it's one less thing that you have to think about in the day, so that you save all of your energy for the important things, or things that you don't have to think so much about food while you're stressed. And that way you can get past that big stressful point in your life, come out the other side, and then start getting creative with food again if you want to. Anyway, that's my cue to go. It's the afternoon chaos. The dog's chasing the cat. The baby's probably going to wake up, and I need to go and eat something, and it's about to be too dark for me to continue filming. So it's a very realistic podcast today. But to finish up, there are lots of different behaviors that people will display when they're under stressful stimulus, right? It doesn't really matter what the behavior is, whether it's undereating, whether it's overeating, whether you binge on ice cream, whether you binge on chips, the specifics don't matter. But the semantics behind preventing these stints from happening again in future are exactly the same. Reminders, writing things on the fridge or wherever you can see it, visual reminders, whatever you need to prompt you. But also the most important thing you can do is have that really healthy dialogue internally with yourself. And if you don't have one, start having some healthy conversations with yourself that don't involve beating yourself up and saying nasty things all the time, because I tell you what, life changes a lot after that point. So that's about it from me. I'm going to finish up. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Looking forward to doing another one for you soon. I believe next week we have a treat for you. We've got Jason from ICN coming to do another episode for Season B 2024. So very excited to have him on the podcast yet again, as always. Anyway, thanks a lot. Bye.